Good morning. I welcome all councillors and members of the public to the latest meeting of the Northamptonshire Executive, including all those watching the meeting via the live stream on YouTube. Members are reminded to keep your microphones muted unless invited to speak. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence. Are there any apologies for absence?
Thank you very much, Chair. The only apology received today is for Councillor Elizabeth Wright. Thank
you very much. Agenda item 2, the minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of August 2025. The minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of August 2025 are set out on pages 5 to 24 of the agenda pack. Are there any comments in respect of their accuracy? I have no amendments. Approval of the minutes have been moved and seconded. Please may I have a mover and a seconder to approve the minutes. Councillor Brian Bennyworth and Councillor Jan O'Hara. Members, approval of the minutes have now been moved and seconded. Please may I have a show of those in favour.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. Sign the minutes. Pass those along, Eddie. Thank you very much. Agenda item 3, members' declaration of interest. Are there any declarations of interest from members? I see no declarations of interest. Agenda item 4, notifications of requests to address the meeting. We have received requests to speak on agenda items 5, 6, 7, 8, 11, 13 and 16. Speakers will be invited to address the Executive in turn at the appropriate point, in accordance with Part 2, Paragraph 8.1.2 of the Constitution. Speakers are reminded that participation at Executive is limited to statements only, which may be taken into account following officer presentation of the report and during members' debate. We'll detail the speakers at the appropriate item. So now we come to agenda item 5, the capital programme update for 2025-2026. I would like to invite Councillor Jim Hakewell to address the meeting. Councillor Hakewell, you have a maximum of 3 minutes to make your statement.
Thank you, Chairman. Very pleased with the way in which the programme update is presented. What I would say is in 3.3, when we talk about alternative options and we talk about Section 106, I think that when presenting the capital programme, it would be beneficial if projects relying on Section 106 expenditure are highlighted such that they stand out as time critical for delivery. This based on legal agreements having time-limited clauses for spending. I appreciate that within the various SMT capital discussions that Section 106 is a key factor, but it would make it easier for Scrutiny to identify projects involving Section 106 and carry out capital programme scrutiny in order of priority spending, especially if the overall capital programme risks being underdelivered. A heading in reports something like Section 106 dependent projects across all directorates would make it easier to keep track both for Scrutiny and for the communities benefiting from 106. That might be followed by a section government grant dependent projects, and so on, down to the projects that are entirely funded by NNC's capital programme and non-dependent on external funding. Being a little more parochial, Chairman, absolutely delighted to see the Maudsley Send unit, Phase 3B, £200,000 going to Maudsley School. It's a super school which will offer an in-area, in Northamptonshire opportunities and create a more sustainable solution for pupils. Equally, the last point, 7.6, consideration by scrutiny. Corporate scrutiny, as you well know, Chairman and executive members, is enthusiastic about the more corporate way of bringing items before the committee and the officers work on it. And we're looking forward, inverted commas perhaps, to receiving opportunities from the executive to scrutinise individual portfolio holder members' ideas before it actually comes to budget. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hakewell, and your observations and views are always welcome. I would now like to invite Claire Edwards, Executive Director for Finance, to introduce the report. Claire.
Thank you, Chair. So the Capital Update report obviously intends to request approvals to the capital scheme that have come forward through the various approval channels internally in order to update our capital programme that was approved in February 2025. Within the report, we detail in section 5 some of those movements and approvals that have come forward and request them to be noted. What I would draw your attention to is a capital scheme coming forward which is fully funded from the Department of Transport, seeking to use £1.8 million of the grant funding that's been allocated to Northamptonshire of £2.5 million in promoting and supporting a net zero emissions bus scheme within the local area for Northamptonshire. There is a report separately on the agenda which does go into more detail around this scheme, but this report does seek and note that this funding has been received and will be allocated, seeking the approval of the other report to this programme. Therefore, I'll draw your attention to the recommendations as set out in section 3, and otherwise I'd like to take any questions.
Thank you very much for that. I now open the debate for members from the floor. Councillor Cheatley.
Yeah, I fully support this paper as part of the capital approval process, which allows the Council to respond to and adapt its capital programme to risks and opportunities during the year. This may be in the form of additional grant funding or delivery of urgent works. The Council has significantly benefited in accessing funding of £2.5 million to support the delivery of a bus improvement plan, which has already been referred to, of which £1.8 million of this funding is to support bus operators to introduce zero-emissions buses within the Northamptonshire area. And also, I'd like to thank Councillor Hakewell for his comments. I think that might be a very good idea, and anywhere where we can support the scrutiny process, I think is a really good thing. So we'll take that into consideration.
Thank you very much for that. Any other members? Councillor Ken Harrington.
Yes, Chair, thank you. I am delighted to second this report promoting the use of grant funding to deliver improvements into public bus services within North Northants. It is key that North Northants utilises grant funding, the opportunities to improve services to all our residents, as well as seeking opportunities to provide value for money. I therefore second the report.
Thank you very much. Any other members wish to speak? Well, I have a mover and seconder. The recommendations are set out on page 26 of the agenda pack. Please may I have a show of those in favour?
That is unanimous, Chair.
Okay. Thank you. We move now on to agenda item 6. I have Councillor Jim Hakewell. Would like to invite Councillor Jim Hakewell to address the meeting. Councillor Hakewell, you have a maximum of 3 minutes to make your statement.
Thank you, Chairman and executive colleagues. Corporate Scrutiny considered the timeline and agreed with the proposals set in your paragraph 5.12. The committee is equally I might say inverted commas, but shall I say looking forward to its 29th of October meeting to understand the overarching financial position prior to detailed scrutiny sessions. We're looking forward to feeding back to the Executive as we progress to the Council Tax Setting meeting on the 19th of February 2026. And just to remind you, Leader and colleagues, 162 days and 14 hours from now. So the budget setting process is on a timescale, and I just put on my notes, no pressure. Pre-decision budget scrutiny is an opportunity to widen the debate about the Council's finances to all non-executive members, and especially, if not more importantly, to the communities we represent, who will judge the value of the council tax they pay in relation to the services provided. Our committee will welcome any input from executive members about budget proposals. Debating issues well ahead of the actual council tax setting meeting will ensure that we share the best knowledge about the pressures on our finances and will explain the hard decisions that will inevitably have to be made, not just here, but in local government across the country. So very much looking forward to chairing the corporate scrutiny and the team we have on corporate scrutiny to use all our intellect and knowledge to help furnish you as an executive with the right information to make the right decisions. So thank you again for welcoming scrutiny.
Thank you very much for that. I'd now like to invite Claire Edwards, Executive Director for Finance, to introduce the report. Claire.
Thank you, Chair. So the report before you outlines our proposal in terms of our budget setting process for 26-27. As you know, the key focus for our budget setting is around the general fund, which is also precluding to set our council tax levels for 26-27. We also need to consider the housing revenue account and also the capital programme. So in our endeavour to do this, what we have set out in section 5.11 and 5.13 is a timescale to enable scrutiny to be fully involved in this process. 5.11 refers to a separate timetable for the contract sum in relation to the Children's Trust, and 5.13 does set out the timetable for the main budget process. So as you'll see, our ambition in here is to ensure that we do deliver a pre-scrutiny timetable to enable us to consider scrutiny's recommendations back to this committee. And ensure that it is delivered within a timescale suitable for the draft budget and consideration prior to setting the council tax. It's really key to ensure that we do keep on track and enable scrutiny to be fully part of this process, and we obviously ensure that we can endeavour to commit to this timetable. And therefore I do propose in recommendations set out in section 3 for executive to consider this timetable as already approved by scrutiny. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I would now like to invite member debate from the floor. Councillor Graham Cheatley.
I fully support this proposed budget timeline for scrutiny and the budget process for 26 to 27. This sets out a clear timeline to deliver the budget to Council in February 2026. So the budget process focuses on three main areas: the general fund budget and setting council tax levels for 26-27, the housing revenue account and setting housing rents for 26-27, and the capital programme for 26 to 30 for both the general fund and housing revenue account. This highlights the significant financial challenge for the medium-term financial plan in setting a balanced budget for 26-27, which is a statutory requirement. The report sets out how scrutiny will be engaged in the budget setting processes to support executive members in preparing a draft budget proposal for consultation. I just wanted to remind people of those pressures, that £33 million budget gap in 26-27. So we've got that in the forefront of our mind, and we're relying on the scrutiny process to assist in that. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'd like to second this recommendation. I support the proposed budget timeline for budget setting and scrutiny. I support the timeline proposed within the report, as this demonstrates my commitment and the executives of effective scrutiny within this council. It will allow time for Corporate Scrutiny Committee to provide timely feedback to the executive at the same time the draft budget proposals are considered in December. Members, earlier this year I said I look forward to delivering the next budget of this council, and here we have it. Any other members wish to comment? Okay. Thank you. I have a mover and a seconder. The recommendations are set out on page 32 of the agenda pack. Please may I have a show for those in favour?
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that, David. So we move on to agenda item 7, the carbon management plan review. I would like to invite Councillor Emily Fedorovich to address the meeting. Councillor Fedorovich, you have a maximum of 3 minutes to make your statement.
Thank you. Good morning, all. Pushing our council's net zero target from 2030 to 2050 will shape not just the years ahead, but decades to come. Choose to delay today, and that damage cannot be undone. This date is not symbolic, it is a benchmark. It shows residents, businesses and investors that this council is serious about delivering a resilient and economically secure future. There is no need to politicise climate change. In the scrutiny meeting last week, every party except Reform recognised the risks of moving these goalposts. Reviewing decisions based on data is a sign of strength, and strength is measured in action. I want our council to be the best council, and that also means striving to be the best in every area. Net zero is an opportunity for North Northants. Lower bills, stronger businesses, better jobs, transport and investment in homes. These opportunities are at risk today. I ask you to leave politics at the door and vote on the facts. The evidence is clear. Councils with ambitious targets have secured millions of government funding. Richmond received £7 million to decarbonise its buildings. Durham has brought in millions more. Industry also responds to leadership. Nissan chose Sunderland for a £1 billion EV hub, creating 1,600 jobs. GE built a blades factory in Teesside, 750 jobs, supplying the world's biggest wind farm. They invested because those regions signalled commitment to net zero. Across Europe, the pattern is the same. Norway set 2025 for all new cars to be electric. Today, nearly 90% of new sales are EVs. Sweden set an early net zero goal and now leads in fossil-free steel. Germany backed the EU ban on petrol cars, and Tesla built a gigafactory outside Berlin with 10,000 jobs. Ambition drives industry. Delay drives decline. In the UK, when government moved the petrol and diesel ban from 2030 to 2035, Ford called it a betrayal. Fleet companies said billions in investments were undermined. Trust was broken that day. Let's not make the same mistake here. I ask you to stand firm. Vote for option 1 to keep the 2030 target. Keep it under review as advised, and support the new scrutiny working group to assess progress. Send a message that North Northants is strong and deserves investment. You each have a responsibility today to not do what is right by your party, but to do what is right by your people. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I'd now like to invite Councillor Trevor Conway to address the meeting. Councillor Conway, you have a maximum of 3 minutes to make your statement.
Hello, and thank you. The Place and Environment Scrutiny Committee voted 4 in favour, 2 against, and 2 abstained in favour of pushing NNC's Carbon Management Plan's net zero target back from 2030 to 2050. This decision to accept the recommendation of our officers, the people who have been working on this for the last 4 years, is based on their latest annual progress report that states, and I quote, "Whilst the Council achieved a slight reduction in our total carbon footprint this past year, a decrease of 79.27 tonnes of carbon, we did not meet our annual reduction target. Council emissions must be reduced by 2,000 tonnes per year, each year. This means we achieved just 4% of this year's annual target. Our new 2050 target date would align North Northants with the national target, the EU target, and even the global aim based on the IPCC's recommendation. It makes net zero logical sense to continue striving to achieve a 2030 date that is neither financially or realistically viable." Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much for that. I'd now like to invite Councillor Steve Geary to enter the floor. Steve? Steve, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Amongst the reports generated for this conversation, the term climate emergency was used. May I remind you of what emergency means? It means 999. Let me give you an example. There's been a traffic accident. People are in a car and there's a fire. And what we do, our loyal heroes, the firemen, the ambulance people and the police intervene. In 20 years' time, in 2050, they intervene immediately. Well, why is that? Well, it's an emergency. You have to act as quickly as possible. And that term has been used in the reports from the council. The quicker we intervene in that accident, the quicker we can deal with the people, the quicker we can save life. We've decided to delay. Thank goodness our emergency services don't take the same route. Can you imagine a fire where the firemen say, let's turn our hoses down. We'll do it as quickly as possible. Let's imagine where the police say, I'm going to stop for a cup of tea. Let's imagine where the ambulances decide to take their foot off the accelerator. Thank goodness my emergency services are run by people who understand the use of the word emergency.
Thank you for that. I'd now like to invite John Padwick to address the meeting. Mr. Padwick, you have a maximum of 3 minutes to make your statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Any decision taken by the Executive at today's meeting to put back the Council's 2030 net zero date back to 2050 will be both shameful and a complete abrogation of proper accountability to the residents of North Northamptonshire. The new Council has only been in place for a few months, and we're supposed to believe that in such a short period of time we've been able to fully and properly review the Council's trajectory on carbon emission reductions, understand the implications and consequences of putting back the 2030 date by 20 years, fully and properly review the financial consequences of retaining the 2030 date, and to be in a position to present it all to last week's Place and Environment Scrutiny Committee for the purposes of receiving a recommendation from that committee that unanimously accepted that they had been properly briefed on all such consequences and implications. Of course, the answer to all of that is no. And that's clear to anyone to see if they followed the debate at last week's Scrutiny Committee meeting, where only the Reform councillors on that committee voted in favour of this recommendation to put the 2030 date back to 2050, with the other parties making it quite clear that it was utterly ridiculous to be considering this proposal now, and with the Labour Party councillor on that committee voting against this recommendation. The paucity of data presented to that meeting was open for everyone to see in the publicly accessible papers, and that recommendation and this proposal is clearly based on nothing more than an ideologically, intellectually defunct stance on climate change that simply fails to recognise or to recognise that the UK has just experienced a summer of record-breaking temperatures, and that the Met Office has just reported that these record-breaking temperatures had been made about 70 times more likely because of human-induced climate change. No one has suggested that the 2030 date should not be reviewed or monitored, but to do so without any proper understanding of the consequences and implications of putting it back by 20 years smacks of a complete lack of transparency, integrity, and accountability. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I'd now like to invite Esther Hobbs to address the meeting. Ms. Hobbs, you have a maximum of 3 minutes to make your statement.
I should be in an economics lesson right now, and frankly, I would rather be. I'm here simply because my teachers and I agree that the preservation of net zero is so crucial for my future. Whatever we have previously believed about climate change, scientists' predictions are now coming true. We're seeing its devastating consequences edge ever closer to wreaking havoc in the UK. Last month, I was on holiday in Cornwall. Since then, dozens of businesses and homes in the area have suffered serious flood damage from some of the most intense rainfall the region has ever experienced. More locally, in the past year, Market Harborough and part of Northampton suffered significant disruption from flash floods. The evidence is clear. These floods are becoming more severe and more frequent due to climate change. This council's choice will directly impact its residents' homes, businesses, and livelihoods. The climate crisis is one of the most important issues for young voters today. In March, I was the British representative to an international youth conference, where, of all the global issues discussed, climate action was top of the agenda. My generation is counting on the politicians of today to preserve our future. Net zero is not a petty, hypothetical waste of money. It's a safeguard to ensure that I and your own children and grandchildren grow up with the promise of a world to inherit. I and so many of my counterparts are scared to inherit towns and countries where economies are reliant on finite, failing energy sectors and to raise our children without access to nature on our doorstep. Councillor Griffiths has said that to work towards the 2030 target does not present good value. However, the Stern review on the economics of climate change shows early action costs about 1% of GDP, while inaction could cost 5 to 20%. Delaying is far more expensive and risks losing funding and investment that ambitious councils are already securing. The science says that we must achieve net zero as quickly as possible to safeguard a habitable planet for my generation. Surely achieving this alone must be considered good value and worthwhile for this council. I'm proud to live under a local authority which is currently on track to meet 95% of its net zero actions. A particular highlight is the recent pledge for 8 new electric buses. It shows that the priorities of our council and its councillors are aligned with those of the young people they represent. Maintaining these pledges means that Northamptonshire Council will remain committed to ensuring the best possible quality of life for its current constituents and future ones, and conserve its place in one of the world's fastest growing industries. We must play our part, so please ensure for all our sakes that Northamptonshire Council is not remembered for being on the wrong side of history. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Ms Hobbs. I would like to invite Tim O'Callaghan to address the meeting. Mr O'Callaghan, you have a maximum of 3 minutes to make your statement.
Good morning, Chair and committee members. Tim O'Callaghan from Electric Places, community interest company based in Northamptonshire, helping businesses, people and places to decarbonise. Electric Places commends the Council's recent decision to invest £1.8 million in 8 new electric buses, supported by £2.5 million from the Department for Transport. This is a constructive and forward-looking step that shows a commitment to low-carbon transport, innovation and efficiency. It clearly shows you're not stopping activity, you're focusing on essential actions that deliver clear benefits. We believe investing in the right sustainable infrastructure is financially prudent. Electric buses, for example, show how climate-friendly choices can also cut costs, improve air quality and reduce maintenance, making Northamptonshire a hub for practical innovation. This kind of investment strengthens the economy, supports jobs and delivers long-term value for residents. The carbon management plan is already bringing results. LED lighting upgrades, new EV charge points, and over 3.8 million to decarbonise the Corby Cube, the Corby Pool and Desborough Leisure Centre are projects underway now. Another 2.9 million from the Levi programme will expand public EV charging, supporting residents and attracting investment. Slowing down now risks undoing this progress. Just as the UK green economy, growing at over 10% per year, as confirmed by the ONS, Institute of Chartered Accountants and Confederation of British Industry, continues to far outpace the wider economy. That is where investment and future jobs will be found. The 2030 target is not an arbitrary deadline. It's about locking in savings and investment. Every energy efficiency upgrade, every depot and building retrofitted keeps money circulating locally, supports small businesses and builds resilience against energy shocks. Delaying to 2050 ties the council to less efficient systems, higher bills and missed opportunities. If the council feels a 2030 target cannot be maintained, at least set clear interim targets. Milestones give businesses, investors and residents confidence that Northamptonshire is serious about decarbonisation and the economic growth it brings. Clear targets are not just about carbon, they are signals to investors and smart economic planning. Northamptonshire was bold when you set the 2030 target. Let's remain bold. If our shared goal is to cut bills and restore growth, delivering on, not delaying the carbon plan is the surest route. It protects public resources, demonstrates leadership and unlocks the green economy's full potential. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that, and well done for getting a mention in on a later item on the agenda. So I'd like now to invite Robert Dixon to address the meeting. Mr. Dixon. Thank you. You have 3 minutes to make your statement. Thank you.
Good morning. I come to you today wearing 3 hats. I'm the chair of a local parish council. I'm the past president of a Rotary club in Kettering, currently the largest club in the East Midlands. And I'm a member of the Save Weekly Hall Wood community group, which worked alongside this council to see off a warehouse development on the edge of Kettering. My aims and the aims of the organisations I represent are to serve local people and protect the environment. And my assumption is that each of you shares those aims. The difference, of course, is that you have a lot more power than I do. But with power comes responsibility. The world faces a climate crisis. The problem is it's a slow-moving crisis. What's required is drastic action to curb carbon emissions, action that would hurt. Understandably, people and governments don't want to take that action. Instead, we have this fudge called net zero, a stepping stone towards which is another fudge called carbon neutrality. But getting on and achieving these is a hell of a lot better than prevaricating or doing nothing. Sooner or later, a tipping point will be reached when the world has to take radical action to decarbonise. Draconian laws and taxes will then be introduced. The price of fossil fuel products will be doubled or trebled to curtail their use. When this time comes, the people who will be least badly affected by these drastic actions will be living in the places that have already decarbonised. This Council has shown genuine leadership in getting us on the path to national net zero. By declaring a climate emergency and setting itself the target of becoming carbon neutral as an organisation by 2030, it has shown it's serious about trying to tackle climate change, and it's been leading the way on what must be done. The Council hasn't been an outlier on this. Nearly 2/3 of councils in England are aiming to be carbon neutral by 2030. Councils are therefore well placed to support the government in achieving net zero by 2050. But national net zero can only be achieved with decarbonisation happening in every household, every community, and every local economy across the country. It will require sustained local leadership to make it happen. Against this background, a decision now to postpone the Council's carbon neutral target date would be an unforgivable failure of leadership. It would send all the wrong signals, not only to the people of Northamptonshire, especially the younger ones, but even more importantly to external business investors. The powerful reasons not to postpone the target date are all set out clearly in the report that's been prepared for you. I urge you to maintain the 2030 target date. Please do not kick the can down the road. We all know what would happen if you did. It would be letting down our children and our grandchildren.
10 seconds.
It would be a decision that would rightly come back to haunt you.
Thank you for that, Mr. Dixon. I would now like to invite George Candler, Executive Director for Place and Economy, to introduce the report. George.
Good morning, everyone. In summary, the purpose of this report is for the Executive to consider and approve a proposed revision of the Council's carbon neutral target, and it also notes the content of the 2024-25 Carbon Management Plan Annual Progress Report and seeks Executive to approve the publishing of said report. By way of background to this report, in July 2021, the Council committed to being carbon neutral by 2030. The Council's Carbon Management Plan was subsequently approved in December 2022 to support this goal. And there are 94 projects which are organised into 8 thematic areas, and Appendix A provides evidence of progress made toward the delivery of the Carbon Management Plan for the period January 2024 through until March 2025, and also provides an update on the Council's carbon footprint. The 4 options that are detailed in 2.3 of the report were considered in detail as part of the review of the current 2030 target. Option 2 is the recommended option as detailed in 5.6. I'll just take a little time just to cover those options. So you'll see under 5.3, Under option 1, the Council would continue to deliver the carbon management plan. However, the pace and financial investment that would be needed would have to increase significantly to ensure operational emissions are reduced as much as possible ahead of the 2030 target. And you'll see in 5.4 the potential costs that are outlined there on an annual basis of circa £830,000 per year. Option 2, detailed at 5.6, presents a favourable solution by aligning with the UK target of 2050. The Council is then free to continue delivering the carbon management plan and achieve carbon neutrality at a pace and cost that is determined by operational need, as well as assessing technical and financial feasibility opportunities underpinned by business cases. Option 3 is detailed at 5.7 within the report and presents an alternative to option 2 in that it recommends the 2030 target is revised to 2040 and provides more flexibility towards the continued delivery of the carbon management plan. And under 5.10, option 4 is highlighted. However, the option to abandon the Council's carbon neutral ambitions entirely to include the delivery of the carbon management plan is proposed to be rejected on the grounds that it does not align with the Council's wider focus on sustainability, its strategic priorities, or the national target. It would also undermine the Council's ability to secure public funding to support energy reduction, cost savings and efficiency, and could deter external investment. Moving to the second element of this report is the Carbon Management Plan Annual Report. And this is an opportunity for the Council to illustrate progress made toward the delivery of this plan. And it is truly a one Council approach with input from all areas of Northamptonshire Council. The Carbon Management Plan, as I've already stated, was published in December 2022 and detailed that as a new organisation, we did not have at the time a historic baseline of carbon emissions from which to work from, and that work would need to be undertaken to build on the quality of the emissions data in the coming years, which is what we've subsequently done. This is also included expanding the range of Scope 3 reporting to consider the wider impact of our operations, with an anticipation that our CO2 emissions would rise, requiring a revised baseline. As you'll see in 5.12.2, for the 2023-24 financial year, the Council's total carbon footprint was just over 20,000 tonnes of CO2, a decrease of 79.27 tonnes CO2 on the 2022-23 figure. And that decrease, as you'll see detailed in the report, is attributable to Scope 3 outsourced emissions and Scope 1 natural gas emissions. A full breakdown of the Council's emissions is detailed on page 5 of Appendix A, which is attached to the report. From the 2023-24 footprint, we have derived the following key information, and this is detailed at 5.12.3 within the report, which includes 30% of emissions come from electricity and gas usage at council-owned and operated sites, and also 23% of emissions are associated with the disposal of household waste, water supply and treatment, and staff business travel. Again, the full percentage breakdown of captured Scope 1, 2 and 3 emissions is outlined on page 7 of Appendix A. The 94 activities outlined within the plan are allocated a delivery term of short, medium or long term. And of the 94 activities, 36 have already been delivered, 53 have a green status, meaning they are on track to be delivered within the time frame, and 5 have an amber status, meaning they are facing some challenges for delivery. In terms of next steps, and subject to approval of the revision to the Council's carbon neutral target, work will commence to revise existing delivery dates of all of the carbon management plan activities, and it is proposed that the report following this meeting will be published on the Council's website. In terms of resources, I would draw members' attention to 7.1.3 of the report and the monies that have been spent, over £1 million, to support the Council's climate change work to drive down our carbon footprint. You'll note that the full £1 million has been allocated for a range of projects, and the full breakdown of those projects are again detailed in Appendix A on pages 13 and 14. Executive are also asked to consider 7.2 of the report under legal and governance, noting that becoming a carbon neutral council by 2030 is not a legal requirement, although legislation applicable to the work covered by the Carbon Management Plan Annual Report includes the Climate Change Act 2008, the Great British Energy Bill, Energy Performance Certificate Regulations, and the Environment Act 2021 obligations. As has previously been mentioned, the UK has a target to be net zero by 2050. Risk, in terms of the recommendations within this report, are outlined in 7.4.1 and 0.2, 3 and 4 within the report. Consideration by Scrutiny was undertaken last week on the 2nd of September and has already been previously mentioned. Scrutiny undertook a robust and detailed examination of the proposed amendment to the Council's carbon neutrality target, and the discussion focused on 4 key areas, those being data availability, financial implications, impact on future inward investment, and timing of the proposal. And full minutes of that meeting are available on our website for those that may be wanting a more detailed, granular look at that debate. However, after an hour of debate, the committee supported the recommendation in relation to option 2, as has already been confirmed by the chair of the committee, Councillor Conway, and also a recommendation to go back to the Scrutiny Management Board that a working group be considered in order to review the carbon management plan and the work currently undertaken and to be undertaken in the coming months and years. Therefore, this summarises the report before the Executive this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that very comprehensive summary of the report. I'd now like to invite members to debate from the floor. Councillor Harrington.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'd just like to assure everybody, really before we go any further, that this council is committed to becoming carbon neutral. Over the past year, we have delivered a wide range of initiatives at reducing emissions and are continuing to do so. Apart from the installation of some 200 charge points for electric vehicles, we have also planted well over 11,000 trees, and a Northamptonshire Decarb Business Grant Scheme has been introduced, and much, much more. Our carbon footprint, just to show you that we've not eased off the gas, we're still working on it, but our carbon footprint has actually decreased, and we are committed to decreasing even further. Our Climate Change Investment Fund has now been fully allocated, and we are supporting over 15 projects that actually contribute to decarbonisation. So what we have done is we have aligned our target with the UK's statutory net zero goal of 2050. There is no point trying to achieve, believe me, unrealistic deadlines that will almost certainly end up costing council tax rises, which the people of North Northants simply cannot afford. In order to achieve those targets that are in fact unachievable, what we are trying to do is deliver real value, both financially and environmentally sound, rather than chasing arbitrary dates. This is not about abandoning our environmental responsibilities, far from it. We will and can achieve in line with national policy, with the phenomenal help of our officers, plus the cooperation of all councillors and partners. Together we can build a greener and more carbon neutral Northamptonshire. It is therefore my absolute pleasure to propose this plan presented to you.
Thank you, Councillor Harrington. Well, option 2 provides a realistic, nationally aligned approach that enables the continued delivery of the carbon management plan without overextending council resources. Delaying the target doesn't mean delaying action. It means prioritising the most impactful projects first, like modernising council buildings and securing external funding. I'm happy to second the recommendations, as these allow us to reset the target and continue delivering the carbon management plan. It's the right move for our community, our finances and our future. Any other members wish to contribute? Councillor Cheatley.
The carbon management plan has delivered real results. There's no question of that. We've gone through it this morning. It's reduced emissions, it's upgraded infrastructure and improved energy efficiency. But we must continue at a pace that reflects our financial reality. And the report already speaks of this in excess of £800,000 that we could end up having to pay annually. We must ensure that every pound spent delivers a return, whether through energy savings, reduced emissions, or improved infrastructure. Option 2 gives us the flexibility to do just that. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any other members? Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you. The Carbon Management Plan annual report shows that progress is being made. But it's clear that the 2030 target is no longer viable without significant financial strain on the Council. Resetting the target is a responsible and pragmatic choice. I support the publication of the Carbon Management Plan annual report. It is a clear demonstration that the Council is making progress, and it helps build trust with residents and stakeholders as we continue to deliver on our environmental goals. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Any members? Councillor Gregory Wilcox.
Good morning, fellow councillors. I'm speaking to you today with a sort of my rural hat on. I've been 50 years in farming and I've never seen it so devastated as it is at the moment. So today I want to speak plainly about the consequences of current net zero policies on our rural economy and why we must take a more balanced, realistic approach. Net zero, as it stands, risks driving up food prices, reducing crop yields and cutting rural employment. Farmers are already facing rising input costs and many may be forced to leave land unfarmed. This isn't just about agriculture, it's about an entire network of industries that support it. Its machinery, transport and supply chains are all at risk. And in times of uncertainty, war, drought, global instability, we will be dangerously exposed. We must not become dependent on imports that may not be there when we need them most. Farming, like any modern industry, must continue to evolve. We need efficiency, innovation, and environmental responsibility, not regression. We must reduce pollution, yes, but we must also maintain output, protect jobs, and keep our rural communities thriving. Severe net zero policies threaten this balance. Take fertilisers, for example. Much of what we import comes from countries like Poland, Lithuania, Russia, Egypt, often produced under poor environmental standards. Meanwhile, our own production, using clean-burning North Sea methane, is far more efficient and less polluting. Methane is used to produce nitrogen, the key nutrient for crop growth. Our domestic fertilisers contain 34% N and break down efficiently in water to feed the crop. Imported alternatives often contain just 24%. They degrade poorly in the soil and are more prone to loss under sunlight. What's the result? Lower yields, more pollution, greater reliance on imports. And now with the carbon border adjustment mechanism, a £75 per tonne surcharge on both imported and domestic fertilisers is becoming unaffordable to the farmer. This could lead up to 50% of our farmland being left idle. That's not just bad economics, it's dangerous. We're talking about mass unemployment, rural poverty, and the collapse of investment. Tractor sales stall, investment will dry up, rural decline will accelerate. Why would you choose this path? Why would you make food more expensive, farming less viable, and the countryside less resilient, all in the name of policies that do more harm than good? We need a smarter approach, one that protects our environment and our ability to feed 70 million people. Let's modernise, not marginalise. Let's invest in clean domestic energy, efficient farming and robust supply chains. Let's make net zero work with rural Britain, not against it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Any other members wish to speak? Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. I've listened a lot, and I'm not sure I'm going to follow Councillor Wilcox, but it seems to me that from all the evidence, the Council's own carbon management plan shows that the 2030 target is simply unachievable. Despite the protestations, I've seen no evidence that changing the target will see Northamptonshire Council lose out on funding or investment from elsewhere. In fact, the public sector decarbonisation scheme focuses on project quality and readiness, not the target. I believe that in resetting the target, we would look to avoid target anxiety. Keeping 2030 on paper only, which is what it is, sets us up to fail. What the Council is doing is actually realigning to remain consistent with the national framework. It will give us stability, credibility, and consistently with the funding policy environment we operate in now. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Any other members? Well, we therefore have the recommendations that are set out on page 103. Excuse me. Thank you. Yeah.
40% of insurance experts.
Thank you, sir. You did have the opportunity to register to speak. Thank you ever so much for your time. Yeah.
Leading to 4 billion deaths and no future for our children.
Yeah. Thank you ever so much for your time. Please. I do wish people would register to speak in the correct manner. The recommendations are set out on page 103 of the agenda pack. They have been moved and seconded. Please may I have a show for those in favour?
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Members, I suggest we take 5 minutes recess, and the gentleman can have his hat returned to him. Thank you ever so much. Okay then, thank you. We'll reconvene the meeting at agenda item 8, which is the traffic enforcement options. I'd like to invite Councillor Jim Hakewell to address the meeting. Councillor Hakewell, you have a maximum of 3 minutes to make your statement.
Thank you, Leader, once again for letting me speak on this particular item. Page 102 in your agenda to approve the expansion of school streets beyond the existing pilot scheme. Page 102, 3.3, and I think it says it there, school streets can improve the experiences of schools, pupils, staff and visitors, and neighbours alike at peak school arrival and departure times. Schemes can support the delivery of a range of benefits at the individual school, neighbourhood and broader local authority area. Excuse me. I'm personally pleased that this initiative is coming forwards, and I sense there will be a very long list of potential implementations with an even longer queue of councillors seeking to nominate their schools. I was going to name some schools in the Rothwell-Morsley ward, but when I was thinking about it, every school in the ward has in the past and continues to report traffic problems around school time. Not wishing to be too parochial, of course, Chairman. It would be ideal if there could be a case study of the school street implemented at St Barnabas Street, Wellingborough, and maybe a scrutiny item even on the relevant committee to inform future rollouts. So very much in support of it, and very much looking forward one day to us opening some more school streets in Northamptonshire. Thank you.
And thank you very much for that, Councillor Hakewell. I'd now like to invite Councillor James Towns to address the meeting. Councillor Towns, you have a maximum of 3 minutes to make your statement.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak on the proposed ANPR enforcement along Newland Street in Kettering Central Ward. The idea of the camera in this pedestrian zone has been around for over 3 years. My main concern is for the safety of children and the elderly using the street. The safety issue was highlighted by Northants Telegraph back in October 22. Derek Bradwell, an 89-year-old Army veteran who served in Malaya in the early 50s, was nearly run over. It was only due to his sharp reflexes, maintained by going to the gym 5 times a week, that he was able to jump out the way of the car turning in from Montague Street. Derek said, "I would like to see cameras that flash when a car goes through it when they shouldn't. It's a pedestrian area and it's an accident waiting to happen." Yesterday, the Northants Telegraph reported that a man had been run over on Saturday evening in Newland Street. He was rushed to hospital in an ambulance, but thankfully the police reported that the man's injuries are not life-threatening. The problem with noise and pollution along this rat run are well described in the officer's report. In addition, cars illegally travelling along the street adversely affect the traffic lights. The change of the light sequencing creates delays for motorists using the Rockingham Road and Eskdale Street junction. Existing signage at the entrance to Newland Street indicates that the prohibition period is at all times. The report refers to restrictions being imposed from only 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday to Saturday. But buses stop from 5 a.m. until 1 a.m. the next morning and run 7 days a week. The street is busy at night with pub and restaurant. It is the main route for pedestrians travelling between the centre and the north of the town. The restrictions should remain as currently indicated, 24/7, and be enforced accordingly. Last July, some volunteers and myself surveyed 76 pedestrians using Newland Street about traffic enforcement. We found 89% were in favour. Fines for motorists misusing the Wellingborough Town Centre bus gate raked in over £600,000 in just 10 months when it was introduced in 2021. So the installation can quickly recover the cost. The street had become run down over many years with many empty shops. This enforcement measure with the recent arrival of the boys' department store, should see continued rejuvenation of Newland Street, creating a safer and quieter street that will encourage more visitors and attract businesses back to the remaining unlet retail units. I trust you will support this initiative. Thank you. And no time to mention electric buses.
Thank you for that, Councillor Towns. It's nice to have some positive support for a report. I'd now like to invite George Candler, the Executive Director for Place and Economy, to present the report. George.
Thank you. So the purpose of this report is twofold: to consider and approve the review and consolidation of the existing traffic regulation order that's in place covering Newland Street in Kettering and Arnsley Road in Corby, and secondly to approve the expansion of the school streets beyond the existing pilot scheme at St Barnabas in Wellingborough, to potentially expand this to cover all areas across Northamptonshire. So moving into a little more detail with regards to the report, in August 2021, the Department for Transport announced that local authorities will be empowered to enforce moving traffic offences as outlined in Part 6 of the Traffic Management Act 2004. And the enforcement of restrictions supports the Council in delivering objectives such as cutting congestion and rat running, enabling more walking and cycling, and creating ultimately more pleasant places to live and work in, as well as improving road safety. Since the 1st of April 2023, the Council has delivered enforcement of the traffic regulation orders, contraventions through the on- and off-road parking enforcement team. Following the implementation of the moving traffic enforcement within George Street, Corby, a review of dedicated bus routes which would benefit from similar enforcement processes was undertaken. The action taken within this area drew significant interest from elected members, from town and parish councils, as well as the wider community relating to other bus lanes and gates where enforcement is not undertaken in the same way. Newland Street and Arnsley Road were identified as areas where significantly high levels of contraventions of the existing traffic regulations order were prevalent, and the safety of highway users and pedestrians were being compromised by heavy traffic flows through the area. And members will see the data that highlights those contraventions in some detail, I might add, within Appendix C of the report. Moving on to school streets. These are, by way of background, roads outside of school with a restriction on motorised traffic at the start and end of the school day. School street schemes may cover part of a road, a whole road, or even several roads near a school. And restrictions on motor vehicles can operate every weekday throughout the year. They are not one-off road closure events. Motor vehicles are not permitted to enter the school street during its hours of operation unless they have been granted an exemption within the traffic regulation order. And these exemptions generally include, but not limited to, vehicles belonging to residents, hackney carriages, blue badge holders, and emergency services, as well as school transport vehicles. Antisocial parking during school drop-off and pick-up times can have a detrimental impact on residential areas, as well as other highways users, pedestrian safety, air quality and congestion, and therefore implementing school street schemes will encourage modal shifts to alternative transport methods and achieve set aims. The current school street located at St Barnabas Street in Wellingborough has been in place since September 2020. However, active enforcement beyond foot patrols has not been undertaken and no camera systems have been deployed at this location. The implementation and enforcement of school streets will also contribute to the Council's statutory duty to promote the use of sustainable modes of travel as set out in the Education Act 1996. Automatic number plate recognition, or ANPR, systems with redeployment capabilities will ensure that identified highways assets where parking issues arise can be responded to, and reducing contraventions and improving safety, air quality and easing congestion across the network as well. So in terms of next steps, these are detailed in section 6 of the report. We will need to consult on the new traffic regulation order, and once those responses have subsequently been considered, and if the traffic regulation order is approved, then equipment, signage and the necessary works can be ordered and installed, as well as the back office setup established. I would draw executive members' attention to section 7 of the report, and in particular 7.1.1 to 7.1.5, which highlights the financial costs of the scheme, where we've got an allocated budget of £164,000, and also in terms of the penalty charge notice costs and how they are discounted, as well as warning notices that will be implemented for the first 2 weeks of once the scheme goes live. So therefore, this summarises the report before Executive this morning. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that, George. I'd now like to invite members to debate from the floor. Councillor Chris McGiffin.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you to our speakers. I have some information for you. Our existing traffic enforcement schemes have had a significant impact on improving road safety for all users, in particular pedestrians and cyclists, especially here in Corby and as well in Wellingborough. These 2 new schemes will continue that work in Kettering Town Centre, as detailed by Councillor Towns, and the Weldon Industrial Estate Corby, which was unfamiliar to me, and I had a couple of queries about why would we do it in what is broadly an industrial area. But of course, it's the imminent supermarket which is due on site there, and indeed there is a restriction to a bus-only lane which has been routinely contravened, as is detailed in the report. Councillor Towns, I took your point about the 24/7 part of access in Kettering, and I shall take that away as a recommendation, and thank you. Councillor Hickwell, on Thursday, I'm out with the enforcement team on my ward on a school street. So I can see for myself, and so can they, based on feedback from a constituent, the issue that we have in these areas. So I welcome the expansion of school street cameras. We don't want to impose the schemes arbitrarily. We want to be keen to work with schools and communities to identify appropriate locations. And therefore I move the recommendations as detailed in 3.1 and in the report for the reasons set out in 3.2. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any other wishing to speak? Councillor Jan O'Hara.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say, really, these schemes are a real opportunity to ensure that the existing traffic restrictions can be enforced. As presently, as we know, they are being disregarded by some motorists, which has caused some of the accidents and caused a lot of consternation among residents around schools, because we need to keep our children safe, and to do that, we need to take action to improve the safety for everybody, really. I think also it's quite important that the scheme will improve the traffic calming and thereby improve the environment, as George has already conveyed. It also, I think, helps stop the rat running that we see around our towns and improve the road safety most emphatically, especially around the schools as well. I think also the income that's generated from these cameras, I know there's a 2-week hiatus, if you like, the surplus income that will generate will go back into our highways and environmental services, and that has got to be good for this council, and it supports us to continue delivering our crucial services for all our residents. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm very familiar with the St Barnabas scheme. It actually predates, as Mr Candler said, this council, yeah, it's really important. We promoted it when I was leader of the Borough Council of Wellingborough, and they are really good schemes. And this administration is determined to protect our school kids going to and from school, but also our shoppers as they're going about their everyday business. So with that, we have a mover, Councillor Chris McGiffin, and a seconder, Councillor Jan O'Hara. Can I have a show for those in favour?
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you ever so much for that. Agenda item 9, the parking enforcement processing system procurement. I'd like to invite again George Candler, Executive Director for Place and Economy, to introduce this report. George.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this particular report is to authorise elements of the penalty charge notice back office processing functions, which are currently outsourced, and to bring these back into the Council. This includes CCTV reviews where camera systems are in use to detect traffic regulation order contraventions, as well as vehicle ownership detail searches, printing and postage of the penalty charge notices, management of postal and email correspondence, and escalation of non-payment through to court proceedings. So by way of background, this council, through the on- and off-road parking enforcement team, provides enforcement of the traffic regulation orders across the highways network and council-owned car parks throughout Northamptonshire. The back office processing is currently undertaken by an external contractor, and that current contract is in place through to the 31st of March 2026. There are varying costs associated with the back office management of this necessary function. The in-house management of defined elements of this process could provide a significant reduction in the revenue pressure currently evident in the processing elements of penalty charge notices. The return of services will also ensure an efficient way of working and enable the Council to retain a larger proportion of any surplus generated through the income element of penalty charge notices to reinvest, importantly, in highways and environmental projects. Processing costs are linked directly to the number of contraventions of relevant traffic regulation orders and are not independent of each other, which needs to be stressed as part of this report. Officers have considered 3 options that have been put before the Executive this morning and as part of this review, and these you will see are detailed in section 5. You will note in 5.4 and 5.5 of option 1, which is the recommended option of what will be taken in-house and also crucially what will remain outsourced and why. In terms of next steps, again, these are detailed in section 6 of the report, which highlights the procurement that will need to be undertaken to ensure that we have a seamless transition on the 1st of April 2026. And there will also be a need to recruit some of our own staff to undertake some of the defined elements within the processing, again detailed within the report. There will also need to be some realignment internally of our budgets to reflect these changes. Turning to the financial element, you'll see this is detailed in section 7 of the report, and you'll note that we have identified that 2 officers, the equivalent of 1.75 full-time equivalent, are required to undertake the processing elements associated with the penalty charge notices, and this will increase the establishment costs by approximately £68,302. It is anticipated that the in-house defined processing of current bus lane and moving traffic offences on and off-road contraventions will achieve the identified medium-term financial plan saving of £77,548 per annum, and these calculations are covered in more detail in Appendix A of the report. There are no anticipated setup costs for the return of processing beyond IT equipment and standard operational equipment associated with such work, such as laptops, mobile phones, and so on. The income from on-street charging and any penalty charge payments received, whether for on-street or off-street enforcement, must be used in accordance with the Act, and these controls are to prevent parking enforcement services becoming wider income-generating initiatives for local authorities. Therefore, this summarises the report to the Executive this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that report. I'd now like to invite members' debate from the floor. Councillor Chris McGiffin.
Thank you again, Chair. I'd like to say that when I had my induction to this portfolio, George was very candid, frankly, about the price we're paying for external processing of this activity and the opportunity for savings. And of course, as we continue to develop our enforcement more widely, thanks to certain grants, then this will become an even bigger opportunity. So developing our own in-house traffic enforcement team has been a big success. I'm out with them on Thursday, as I mentioned to Councillor Hickwell. We continue to grow the team and increase our presence in streets and car parks, expanding the back office staff element by changing how we procure the services. Not only ensures we can carry out these services more efficiently, but continues our work to improve the service provided to residents. It'll also mean the council's retaining more of any surplus generated by penalty charge notices, which goes back into our highways and environmental schemes, and my goodness me, do we need the money. I'm therefore happy to move the recommendations as detailed in 3.1 of the report for the reasons set out in 3.2.
Thank you very much. Any other members wish? Councillor Brian Bennyworth.
Thank you, Chair. I believe that it's really important that the Council retains control and responsibility for the decision-making for issuing penalty charge notices and being accountable for that. The recommendation model provides that balance between giving residents the right service and ensure it is carried out in a cost-effective way. Therefore, I'm happy to second the report.
Thank you very much for that. Any other members? Councillor Graham Cheatley.
The proposal in this report is an excellent example, I think, of where we can make use of a blended approach of public and private sector arrangements to not only improve the service to residents, but create a more cost-effective model. Enabling this to happen will improve outcomes for residents and businesses across North Northamptonshire and create us some nice savings as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. And yeah, as far as vacancies are concerned, if current trends are anything to go by, there will be no shortage of applicants for these various jobs. So we have a mover, which is Councillor Chris McGiffin. We have a seconder, which is Councillor Ken Harrington. Can we move to... sorry, Councillor Brian Benworth, I do apologise. May I have a show of hands for those in favour?
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. So now we come to agenda item 10, which is the local bus framework contract. And I'd like to invite George Candler, Executive Director for Place and Economy, to introduce the report. Over to you again, George.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this particular report before you this morning, Executive, is to agree the procurement of a framework contract for the provision of local bus services for a period of up to 8 years, and this will offer the Council a more effective and efficient basis for such contracts than individual tenders, which is what we undertake at the moment. And the value of these contracts may be up to £24 million. So going into a little bit more detail within the report, North Northamptonshire Council, as the local transport authority, has a deregulated bus market which allows operators to operate services on a commercial basis, and very similar to many parts of the UK. The Council also has a role in considering the provision of additional services that are not currently included in the commercial network, which are most likely to be rural and off-peak services. And these could be services that are required for isolated urban areas and home to school and college transport as well. So this particular bus open framework contract will allow the Council to procure these non-commercial services using funding from its own revenue budget, bus services improvement plan funding, as well as Section 106 funding. The framework will allow the Council to act promptly to the changing network and supplier actions and operations, as well as offering a more effective and efficient basis for procuring bus services than the current individual contracts, and this will lead to improvements and better management of contracts and potentially influencing the supplier market. However, individual contracts will be awarded on a call-off basis through a mini competition within the framework list of suppliers. Recent years have seen significant increase in the funding which the Council has available, which is extremely welcome, particularly for subsidising our bus services. And this has been through the Bus Service Improvement Plan grant funding from the Department for Transport. And whilst this revenue funding can be spent on a wider range of initiatives than just subsidising bus services, as you'll hear later on a separate report, it has significantly increased the Council's spending on subsidy agreements. And this is well laid out in 4.5 of the report, where the table highlights the funding increase over the last 4 years. Funding allocations for 2026-27 onwards are not yet known, but it is anticipated that grant funding allocations will be announced later this year for the period 2026-27 through until 2028-29. Bus services are also subsidised using developer contributions secured through the Section 106 agreements associated with new developments, and such funding is not tied to a particular financial year in the same way. The framework would run for an initial period of 4 years, with the option of two-year extensions, giving a maximum framework duration of 8 years. And the individual call-off contract length will be limited to a maximum duration of 4 years. So in terms of next steps, these are to develop the framework as detailed in 6.1 and to have this in place by January 2026 to enable us to start calling off those contracts to enable new bus service routes in place under new contracts by April 2026. And a detailed timetable will be developed in conjunction with procurement with this regard. It should be noted that the award of the framework contract does not commit the Council to any expenditures. Expenditure is only incurred when call-off contracts are let. The ability to award such contracts will be dependent on the availability of funding over the term of the framework contract, and such funding will be expected to be a mixture of the Council's revenue budget for subsidised bus services, government grant funding, as I've already been referring to, and developer contributions through Section 106. Based on the current levels of grant and developer funding available to the Council, it is possible that expenditure through the contract could reach £3 million per annum. And with a maximum framework duration of 8 years and the ability to award 4 years call-off contracts, the framework's validity, this could give a potential spend through the contract of up to 36 million, although prudently we think it's to be less than this figure. Executive will see extensive review of this approach has been taken with colleagues in procurement, human resources, finance and legal, and is detailed in section 7 of the report. This summarises the report before Executive this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to invite members to debate from the floor. Councillor Chris McGiffin.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be brief. I'm really pleased to propose this paper. It's a further demonstration of our commitment to improving public transport for all. We'll get more buses. There'll be more support for home to school. We're introducing a new framework contract for bus services which streamlines how we work with operators, making it easier, faster and more cost-effective to deliver the services our communities need. It's a smarter way to secure reliable transport and ensure public money delivers maximum value. I'm delighted, therefore, to move the recommendations as detailed in 3.1 of the report for the reasons set out in 3.2.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ken Harrington.
Thank you, Chair. It's my pleasure to second this new open framework, approach, and is a new innovative way to work effectively with our operators, which in turn can only benefit our communities. It allows us to bring in new suppliers every 2 years, which in turn keeps the market more dynamic and is able to compete on best terms. The administration is utterly determined to drive efficiency and speed up services for residents, and even more importantly, at the very best value. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Brian Benworth.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Firstly, I'd just like to highlight, I think, what everybody knows, but how important public transport is. It's a lifeline for many of our residents, and it connects people to jobs, education, healthcare, and indeed each other. With increased funding and a more flexible contracting approach, we're making sure that no community is left behind. I believe this framework will help us respond more quickly to local needs and ensure services are accessible, dependable and inclusive. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Any other members? Councillor Jan O'Hara.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really quite proud of this coming forward. I'm proud that we're making best use of the funding available to us. And, you know, from the government grants that we get to develop the contributions to support our local bus services, they are absolutely a lifeline for so many people, as we already noted. By adopting the framework contract, we're reducing the red tape and the administrative costs, allowing us to focus resources where they matter most, which is on delivering high-quality, subsidised services that meet the needs of our residents. As we can see, public transport is key to supporting our Big 50 vision too. It creates a place that is connected and inclusive, supporting healthier lifestyles and environments, and thereby helping to future-proof our progressive, outward-looking council and its partners. This makes excellent business sense and shows a respect and symbiosis we have developed with our partners through our Big 50 vision. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. And can I commend our officers for the quality of this excellent report. The recommendations are set out on page 160 of the agenda pack. They've been moved and seconded. May I have a show of those in favour?
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. So now we'll move to agenda item 11, zero-emission bus schemes. We're quite empty now, aren't we? I'd like to invite Councillor Trevor Conway to address the meeting. Councillor Conway, you have a maximum of 3 minutes to make your statement. Thank you.
Hello, thank you. The Place Environment Scrutiny Committee fully support the purchase of these 8 new electric buses. It highlights that we are still committed to reducing our carbon emissions where it can be done in a financially viable way. Any work we can do to reduce our carbon and make our authority a better, healthier place to live and work is a very good thing. There are many more things we can do to go further, and as a responsible council, that's exactly what we will do. These buses are a small but important step, and we fully support this plan and hope to see more funding applied for in the future to further expand our fleet as technology further develops. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Now I'd like to invite Councillor Jim Hakewell to address the meeting. Councillor Hakewell, you have a maximum of 3 minutes to make your statement.
Thank you, Chairman. The last hearing for me today. I'm not sure if I should actually declare an interest, but I think it's a wider interest because I'm really looking forward to sharing travel on these electric buses which go through my home village of Braybrook. It's a really exciting enhancement to our public transport network. It brings government financing into Northamptonshire with a clear timescale for ensuring that the funding is spent, as mentioned in the earlier item on the capital finance update. When rolled out, it will reduce emissions and potentially establishing charging facilities that can be used for further expansion of the network in the future beyond what is presented to you today. It's not new or highly innovative as a project, as experience has been gained by bus operators across the country, making sure that the systems and vehicles are already tried and tested. Electric buses work well on viable routes. Leicester City is just up the road, has implemented electric buses with half of its fleet now running on electric buses, which is 134. And this includes double-deckers on appropriate routes. Leader, they're easily spotted by their Kermit the Frog green livery. I don't know what our livery will be, but as you travel around in Leicester and Leicestershire, you see them very clearly. So I think it's a super initiative, properly financed, and I'm looking forward to my first trip from Braybrook to Harborough, dare I say, or should I say Braybrook to Kettering. Thank you.
I much prefer the second alternative, Councillor Hakewell. So with that, I'll invite George Candler, the Executive Director for Place and Economy, to introduce the report. Thanks, George.
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of this particular report is to agree to use external capital funding from the Department for Transport to provide grant funding towards the purchase of 8 electric buses for the Kettering, Rothwell, Desborough and Corby Market Harborough corridor. So again, turning into a little bit more detail with regards to this particular report. Again, by way of background, the executive members may remember in last month's report we referenced the Department for Transport's capital funding and that the Council has been awarded 2.589 million of Bus Services Improvement Plan capital funding for the 2025-26 year. And this funding has already been included in the General Fund capital programme that's previously been agreed by full council in February of this year. It's important to note this is the first time that capital funding that this council has received towards the implementation of its bus services improvement plan, and I think it's fair to say that the level of funding that we received was higher than we anticipated. But welcome. At the time of drawing up the council's current bus service improvement plan in 2024, it was envisaged that the funding for the introduction of electric or hydrogen buses would actually come from a separate funding source, such as the government's Zero-emission buses regional area, conveniently abbreviated to ZEBRA scheme. However, it appears that there will be no future rounds of this particular funding, and therefore expenditure on electric buses will be a sensible way of using the council's Bus Services Improvement Plan monies. An indicative delivery plan for spending those monies was submitted to the Department for Transport in March 2025, and it included an indicative allocation of 1.8 million towards the introduction of electric buses on a priority route, including supporting depot infrastructure. Under 5.1, it's important to note that we need to comply with subsidy control, which some members may previously recognise the term state aid rules. And the intention is to follow the same basis as funding as the government has used for its previous ZEBRA scheme that I was referring to earlier, where the council uses the ring-fenced Department for Transport grant to fund 75% of the additional cost of the electric vehicles, including the charging infrastructure that I was referring to earlier. And this is the additional cost compared to otherwise purchasing conventional diesel buses, and the operator would fund the remaining 25% of those additional costs. Initially, it was expected that the priority route for introducing these electric buses would be on the Stagecoach X4, Northampton, Wellingborough, Kettering, Corby, Oundle, Peterborough route, which members will be familiar with, I'm sure. And that actually carries over 30% of all bus passengers here in Northamptonshire. However, the daily mileages worked by the vehicles on this route are too high for the current battery technology. And instead, the intention is to introduce the new vehicles on Stagecoach services 17, 18 and 19, which link Hanwood Park in Kettering with Rothwell and Desborough, as well as extending those services to Corby and Market Harborough. And again, it's important to note that this service is within the range of the current battery technology that is available to us at this stage for the 8 vehicles that are being proposed to be purchased. 5.3 highlights the estimated costs of the scheme and the apportionment between the funders. And as I've already mentioned, whilst the council is meeting 75% of the additional costs, it is only actually meeting around 40% of the total costs of the project. In terms of next steps, assuming agreement by Executive on the recommendations this morning, work would continue to develop a suitable funding agreement with Stagecoach, including finalisation of the costs, and completion of the funding agreement would then allow Stagecoach to place orders for the new buses and associated depot infrastructure. And it is anticipated that we will see the 8 new electric buses entering service by the autumn of 2026. In terms of financing around this project, this is detailed in 7.1.1, as well as the Subsidy Control Act as well is referenced in 7.1.2. In terms of consideration by scrutiny, Councillor Conway has already fed back from the Place and Environment Scrutiny Committee, which again gave it a robust discussion last Tuesday, the 2nd of September. Full details of that discussion are on our website for that particular meeting. Therefore, this summarises the report before the Executive this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that report. I'd now like to invite member debate from the floor. Councillor Chris McGiffin.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Candler. We're committed to improving our public transport network to benefit residents. This is a demonstration of our commitment to embrace new technology. I've worked with and by the side of electric vehicles for as long as they have existed, and I have kind of wrung my hands at their capability, their range, mostly in the HGV sector. And I'm delighted to see this step forward. Battery technology improves daily. We're still limited by the current capability, hence the selection of routes here, but I'm looking forward to the day we can run the X4 entirely electrically. The route's been chosen because of this current battery technology, and they need to have sufficient vehicles to justify the investment. I'm therefore very pleased to move the recommendation as detailed in 3.1 for the report for the reasons set out in 3.2.
Thank you very much for that. Any other members wish to speak? Councillor Graham Cheatley.
This is a prime example of where we intend to move forward with our carbon management plan, where it makes financial sense to invest in environmental initiatives, and hopefully this will continue. This scheme is funded from money secured from the Department for Transport and will enable us to have the first of which I hope is many electric buses operating across Northamptonshire. So I'm therefore very happy to second this report.
Thank you for that. Councillor Brian Benniworth.
Thank you, Chair. I think the promotion and adoption of electric vehicles supports our Council's long-term commitment to the health of our population by helping to improve air quality, amongst many things. I believe it also aligns with this Council's Big 50 vision for a place where we can all live healthy lives in a cleaner environment for our residents. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I'm going to say it again because I think it needs to be said. This is an example of our commitment not only to deliver fit for service buses for our residents, but also a cleaner, greener alternative under our new target as we move forward. The recommendations are set out on page 168 of the agenda pack. They've been moved and seconded. May I have a show for those in favour?
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. So now we come to agenda item 12, which is the review of our waste policies. I feel sorry for George now, but yet again, Mr. Candler, I wonder if you can present this report.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this particular report is seeking Executive's approval on a suite of documents detailed in 1.1, including Northamptonshire's waste and recycling policy, the strategy for tackling litter and fly tipping, and the environmental crime and enforcement policy. Delivering waste collection and street cleaning services is an essential part of what the Council does for its local residents and communities. And the appropriate management of waste and litter is vital to support the creation and maintenance of places we can all be proud of. And these services are these services and responsible waste disposal by our residents contribute towards our wider Big 50 vision to create places that are proud, prosperous and proactive. This particular report summarises the main policies for waste, recycling and street cleansing services delivered across Northamptonshire. The policies were agreed originally by the Executive back on the 18th of November 2021 and were developed to create a set of harmonised standards for waste, recycling and street cleansing. And through these policies, the Council has clearly set out how it will provide waste management and street cleaning services to our communities to ensure they remain places that we all enjoy living and working in, as well as visiting. The policies also make it clear what is expected of our residents with regard to appropriate disposal of waste and litter. The attached policy documents cover several service areas and the policies associated with delivering these services, and these are detailed at 2.5 within the report. The Council, by way of its own statutory functions in relation to waste, are extensive, and these are detailed in 4.3 of the report. And through these policies that are before the Executive this morning, the Council has clearly set out how it will provide waste management and street cleansing services that align with national legislation, as well as the Executive's commitment to creating places that are enjoyable and safe to live, work and visit. Importantly, the policies also make it clear how residents can play a positive part in ensuring they dispose of their waste responsibly and legally. The policies clearly outline how the Council will use its enforcement powers as well and its resources to tackle, unfortunately, the small minority who dispose of their waste irresponsibly and illegally. In this way, the Council seeks to protect our built and natural environment from unsightly, unsafe and polluting deposits of waste. Officers are now working through a number of service reviews to ensure any disparity of services as a result of the application of the legacy policies are now reset, and this is highlighted at 5.1 within the report, and also developing key areas of the service, and again these are highlighted at 5.2 of the report. In terms of next steps, subject to approval of the recommendations this morning, the policy documents will be updated and republished. And there will also be some training updates for colleagues, both in front-facing operations team, as well as customer services colleagues, and the wider Council to improve the general level of waste policy knowledge and to improve customer interactions with the Council in respect of waste services. Turning to consultation under 7.5, any significant service changes would automatically prompt a public consultation exercise to inform service users of potential updates or improvements. And as you'll note in 7.6 of the report, this proposal before members this morning has already been subject to the Place and Environment Scrutiny Committee on the 1st of July this year, and you'll see the response and the areas that were discussed detailed in 7.61 of the report. Therefore, this summarises the report before Executive this morning. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. Well, I'd like to open it up to member debate from the floor. Councillor Ken Harrington, the Executive Member for Assets for Waste and Environmental Services. Over to you.
One of my favourite subjects. Yes, I would like to say that that on this one, the officers have done a great job, as always, and they've really looked through everything. And what we've done is we've actually reviewed and revised some of the policies for waste and street cleaning services right across Northants. And as we are a unitary authority now, we need to be consistent, efficient, and way above all, effective with the services we deliver. This includes from clean streets and disposal of waste, but also the very important crime and it is a crime of fly tipping, which we aim to operate an attack on those who believe it is okay to fly tip wherever and whenever they like. I welcome all residents who support keeping North Northamptonshire a clean environment, and so I have pleasure in proposing this report. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Any other members wish to speak? Councillor Greg Wilcox.
I'm pleased to second this report, and Councillor Harrington quite rightly says that they enable us to take strong actions against illegal disposal of waste. Most of our residents take pride in the community and dispose of waste responsibly. But for the small minority who don't, our policies make it clear we will act through education, enforcement and consistent services. We're working to ensure that every street, park and public space reflects the pride we all feel in North Northamptonshire.
Thank you very much for that. Any other members? Councillor Graham Cheatley.
Yeah, going on from what Greg's just said there, our residents deserve reliable, high-quality services. That's why it's important that we regularly review our waste and recycling policies to ensure they remain aligned with national legislation and continue to deliver value for money. From household collections to tackling fly tipping, we're making it easier for everyone to do the right thing and keep North Northamptonshire clean. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. Well, as members of this executive know, there's nothing angers me more than littered streets and fly tipping. You know, I might even get you all out again to do another session somewhere else in North Northamptonshire very, very soon. But North Northamptonshire is a place we are proud to call our home, is it not? Through our commitment to clean streets and efficient waste services, we're delivering on our Big 50 vision, creating communities that are safe, welcoming and full of civic pride. These policies are not just about bins and litters and litter. They're about building a better future together. There's been examples of closures of lay-bys that are known hotspots for fly tipping. I know there's one in Earlsbarton that's recently been done and has been a problem for many, many years. And we will continue to look at that moving forward. So with that, the recommendations are set out on page 179 of the agenda pack that have been moved and seconded. Please may I have a show of hands for those in favour.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. We come to agenda item 13, antisocial behaviour policy and procedures. I'd like to invite John Padwick to address the meeting. John, you have a maximum of 3 minutes to make your statement.
Thank you, Chair. Antisocial behaviour is blighting too many parts of Kettering. We've all seen the reports. Residents on local estates dealing with drugs and weapons, children in the town centre climbing onto roofs and setting fires, and shoplifting and intimidation on our high street, even raised in Parliament. The government, the police, fire and crime commissioner and our local MP are already taking this seriously. Labour's crime and policing bill will put a named neighbourhood officer in every community. And the Police and Crime Commissioner has pledged to reopen a police station in Kettering, which is much needed. These are really concrete steps to restore visible policing and rebuild confidence. But while national government and policing are moving, our local councils must not stand still. North Northamptonshire Council and Kettering Town Council need to do far more to keep our residents safe. Their new antisocial behaviour policy identifies no additional budget or resource requirements. But how can we expect change without proper investment and prioritisation? Residents deserve more than words on paper. They deserve action on the ground. Antisocial behaviour is not inevitable. With stronger local leadership, proper enforcement and genuine partnership working, we can make Kettering a safer place to live, work and shop. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I would now like to invite Jane Bethea, Director of Public Health, Communities and Leisure, to present the report. Jane, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. With permission, I would actually like to invite Kerry Pennell, who's the report author, and the Assistant Director of Communities and Leisure to present the report.
Absolutely delighted. Over to you then, Kerry.
There we go, no problem. Thank you very much. So this report introduces a new antisocial behaviour policy for North Northamptonshire Council. The Council has powers under the Antisocial Behaviour, Crime and Policing Act 2014 to investigate complaints and incidents of antisocial behaviour and take action to help find resolutions to problems being experienced by our residents and our businesses. The antisocial behaviour powers are statutory, and exercising those powers can lead to enforcement action, and therefore it's critical that our approaches are uniform, transparent and wholly based on the test of evidence presented and investigated. It's critical that the Council has a consistent approach in the execution of these powers, and that we make it clear to residents and stakeholders about what we will do and when. This has been captured in the new policy being presented today. Prior to the establishment of North Northamptonshire Council, the former Sovereign District and Borough Councils had antisocial behaviour policies and service standards in place. The development of a policy for North Northamptonshire Council has been informed by these earlier policies, alongside looking at the current arrangements that we have in place and what's working well. Community safety partners have been engaged in the drafting of this policy. The Council uses antisocial behaviour powers across a number of service areas, including community safety, housing landlord services, waste services, environmental protection and planning enforcement, and therefore consistency in tackling antisocial behaviour is key. The policy covers how we respond to and investigate complaints and incidents, the things we can investigate and act on, and also the things that are not considered to be antisocial behaviour. We also recognise in the policy that the individual service areas also have other primary legislation and statutory powers that they need to be cognisant of when dealing with antisocial behaviour cases. The focus when dealing with complaints of antisocial behaviour is about early and preventative action wherever possible. A range of tools are available to help with this, such as informal warning letters to one or both parties, but more serious antisocial behaviour and its continuation after a person has been given those warnings can be addressed through enforcement, through community protection notices and fixed penalty notices. But we have to follow those procedures incrementally to ensure that we have followed all of our toolkit appropriately. Following a breach of a community protection notice, we can take prosecution under our council's enforcement policy, which obviously can result in a fine or other action and a criminal record. A lot of work, as has already been mentioned, to tackle complex cases of antisocial behaviour relies on effective partnership working. This isn't something that the council should or can tackle on its own. So we work closely with the police and other organisations, such as registered housing providers, social care teams, health professionals, probation, fire and rescue, and the Children's Trust. And there are a number of really strong partnership arrangements to support this activity, both in terms of looking at hotspot locations, which I would describe as our sort of place-based antisocial behaviour, but also those complex cases where multi-agency intervention is required. This policy has been subject to public consultation during June, July and August of this year. There were 143 responses in total to the consultation, and overall the feedback was mainly positive. The majority of individuals that completed the questionnaire agreed with the aims of the policy, how we will investigate antisocial behaviour, and also the elements that set out what the Council can expect from the complainants of antisocial behaviour. It is proposed that once approved and adopted, we do further work and work with our wider stakeholders to ensure that we can develop an accessible version of the policy. The policy was discussed at Place and Environment Scrutiny Committee on the 2nd of September. The committee was supportive with an ask that more data on antisocial behaviour reported to the Council comes forward to a future scrutiny session. So that concludes my introduction of the report and the policy. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that report. I'd now like to invite member debate from the floor. Councillor Gregory Wilcox.
I support the new policy and the consistent approach it will bring in for our services which deal with ASB. It will help our residents understand what they can expect from the council when they report ASB, and help officers and explain when issues reported do not actually fit with the allegation of ASB. The policy will also help bring clarity to our partnership working with the police to help us quickly decide which organisation is best placed to lead an investigation and how we can jointly problem solve those that need a multi-agency approach. This is a policy with safety and security and a basic respect for others at its heart. It's about restoring the right of people across the country to feel safe and proud of belonging to their local area. One other major point really, the policy will be reviewed annually or biannually just to hone it, to make sure it's heading in the right direction at all times. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Other members? Councillor Eddie MacDonald.
Thank you, Chair. Antisocial behaviour, as I'm aware from my 30 years of policing locally, has significant impact on those who experience it. From those who are too scared to walk to the shops and those which the media would describe as neighbours from hell. This policy makes it clear that this council will take the safety of our community seriously. It lays out how we will work with the victims of antisocial behaviour and our community safety partners such as the police. I support the adoption of this policy.
Thank you very much. So quick and effective action to address antisocial behaviour is really important to us as a council and to our residents and businesses who operate in Northamptonshire. I recognise that often matters can be resolved through early intervention to prevent things getting worse, and through dialogue and informal warnings rather than having to take enforcement action. But that when we take enforcement action, the council has a strong policy framework in which to do so. I support the adoption of this policy. Other members? Councillor Brian Benworth.
Thank you, Chair. During my long career in housing, I've really seen how ASB can be a blight on residents and its communities. I was really pleased to see in the report in section 4.1.1 that this report does cater for the need, should it arise, to increase our resources to tackle this issue, which I know that we're all committed to do. I think the Council have a clear policy on how we need to deal with matters reported to us in order to instil trust and encourage residents to report issues when they experience them. I'm delighted to support this policy. I think it's a fantastic one, and I think we should wholeheartedly support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Chris McGiffin.
Yeah, very quickly, Chair, thank you. And thank you to our speaker who used the word blight, which is precisely how I see this issue. ASB affects people's pride in the places they live, the places they work and visit. Reputationally, it can undermine trust and confidence if we don't take action efficiently. Anything that moves us to a place where we can get a better handle on and deal better with antisocial behaviour is welcome from where I sit. Thank you.
Councillor Ken Harrington.
Yes, Leader. I was only going to say, really, that it's a great shame that we don't see more of the boys' clubs around and so on and so forth. I remember hundreds of years ago when I was a young man, we used to have a lot of what we called yobbos hanging around the streets and so on and so forth. But there were boys' clubs that you could go to, and I went to one, Shearwater Boys Club, and as you know, Leader, I did amateur boxing for 3 years for the Shearwater Boys Club. And pretty good I was too, but that's another story. But antisocial behaviour, bullies, aggression, and all this sort of thing, I really do hate it. I support most vigorously the actions we have already heard regarding, yes, antisocial behaviour, but any type of environmental crime against society, and of course my big hate, fly tipping. So this will provide the framework to sort out a range of issues efficiently and effectively that are negatively affecting our communities.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Jan O'Hara.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just firstly say thank you to our officers and the staff for all their endeavours to help reduce antisocial behaviour. We see it on the streets every day, and you know our staff are absolutely impeccable in how they deal with it in what really are quite strenuous, I think, circumstances. And they make the areas safe and clean up after the perpetrators when antisocial behaviour people have kind of left debris and damage, and we're truly grateful for all the work that they do undertake to try and stay, help keep us safe. And the staff, in a collaboration with our Big 50 partners, are really pushing things forward. So this coming forward now is a great policy. The antisocial behaviour has affected the prosperity of some of our town centres at the moment, and if it's not addressed, it will get worse. I support the policy and the Council's approach to working collaboratively across departments and with our partners, our businesses and our residents to make our towns and communities safer. So in this way, we will be able to future-proof them to lead a happier, healthier and more collaborative lives. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. Councillor Graham Cheatley.
I know antisocial behaviour is one of my real issues that I have. I know for myself and another colleague, we've spent an awful long time on one particular case, which I won't go into details, but horrendous issues with a neighbour. But this seems to blight, we'll use that word again, it seems to blight a lot of our communities, and it's something that we really have to stamp out. I know the lead hasn't mentioned it already, but we have met with Superintendent Freeman recently and other leaders to discuss the issues of antisocial behaviour, and we've agreed a plan with the police moving forward. But we must work better and more effectively with our partners and the public. What I would say, I would urge all residents who have issues with antisocial behaviour, you must report them to the police. Without you reporting them, we haven't got the statistics. We don't know where those hotspots are. So I know there's a bit of apathy out there, but I would encourage you to report those issues to the police so that we know where we can put resources. But this policy will support the Council in taking efficient action on antisocial behaviour reported to it, allowing us to act as early as possible in order where possible to prevent more costly interventions down the line. So I fully support this policy.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kirk Harrison.
Thank you, Chair. As with many others, I also come across a lot of antisocial behaviour in my council casework. I also agree with our speaker. I think we don't just need words, we need concrete actions, and we need to be consistent. And I believe that this policy does exactly that. It's a real signal of our intent. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Padwick raised some very good observations, and we as an executive and as a council had meetings with senior police officers in the very early stages of this administration, and guess what, we won't let up. We're waiting. You'll soon be furnished with the results of our first ever resident satisfaction survey, but I can tell you that ASB features very heavily in that. So we will take that forward as we create our corporate plan, and we will tackle antisocial behaviour, something that the last administration sadly didn't, as one of our priorities. So with that, I'd like to, we've got a proposer and a seconder. The recommendations are set out on page 230 of the agenda pack. Please can I have a show for those in favour?
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. We're getting there. So now we come to item number 14, the integrated community equipment services, and I'd like now to invite David Watts, Executive Member for Adults, Health Partnerships and Housing, to introduce this report.
Thank you, Chair. The Integrated Community Equipment Services report seeks permission from Executive to vary the current contract by 8 months, undertake a full procurement exercise for the next period of the contract, which will be a 5+1+1+1, so 8-year potential contract, which would commence in April 2027, subject to the variation referred to at Recommendation 1. And finally, to delegate authority to myself in consultation with the executive member, Councillor MacDonald, to make the decisions necessary to award that contract in line with the Council's procurement rules. Community equipment is an important part of supporting people to remain independent or to gain more independence. It also helps the Council to deliver its social care responsibilities as set out in the Care Act more efficiently and at better cost through provision of one-off equipment in place of people's care and support that they might receive through a care agency or a residential care home. The 8-month variation allows partners involved, that's West Northampton Council, Northamptonshire Integrated Care Board and ourselves at Northamptonshire Council, the time to explore the current best practice and address some local challenges and opportunities that we've identified, which includes exploring systems that allow people to self-assess equipment that might be suitable for them, and to create a resource for care homes to be able to purchase equipment that ordinarily would be loaned to them via our service whilst they purchase that equipment. That would enable us to reduce some of the inefficiency associated with delivery and collection of loan equipment that we see currently. Happy to take any questions, however, commend the report for the recommendations at 3.1 for the reasons set out at 3.2, and back to you, Chair, to find a proposer and seconder for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd now like to invite members to debate from the floor. Councillor Eddie MacDonald first.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that report, David. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to propose this paper to the Executive for approval. And since taking on this role in May this year, I've had the opportunity to understand more around how officers try to manage demand and support needs under very difficult and challenging circumstances, if we're honest. Re-ablement, independence and recognising the individual strengths of people that we support are fundamental parts of the approach that is embedded in the adult social care. The provision of equipment is one of the many tools in the toolbox that are used to provide holistic support to people. I am pleased to see that the intention is to develop this service to include the ability for people to self-assess equipment they may need and for providers to buy off the catalogue so that the quality of the equipment is consistent. I'm also really pleased to see that the approach proposed is heavily focused on joint working with the NHS and our partners in West Northamptonshire, creating greater opportunities to deliver value for money and improve the efficiency of the service that is delivered through the contract. Thank you.
Over to our excellent Chair of the Housing Improvement Board, Councillor Brian Benworth.
Thank you. You flatter me, Chair. I'd just like to make what probably will be the obvious point that provision of this vital equipment is essential in supporting people to live more independent lives and improve their health and well-being. I also recognise that there are particular points in contractual cycles that provide the opportunity to review and rescope how services are delivered. And I'm pleased to see that this approach is being taken, and therefore I'm happy to second the proposal. Thank you.
Any more members? Councillor Graham Cheatley.
Yeah, I'm also fully supportive of the proposed approach. It's essential that the Council takes opportunities to consider how it delivers significant services through contracts over multiple years. So this approach enables the time for the Council and partners to review the opportunities to deliver this service at scale and maximise efficiency and value for money. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Well, the item has been proposed by Councillor Eddie MacDonald and seconded by Councillor Bennyworth. The recommendations are set out on pages 266 and 267 of the agenda pack. They've been moved and seconded. Please may I have a show for those in favour?
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. So now we move on to agenda item 15, which is the Northamptonshire Council Insurance Programme Procurement. I'd like to invite Claire Edwards, our Executive Director of Finance, to introduce this report. Over to you, Claire.
Thank you, Chair. So this report seeks to, in two stages, roll over the contract for 26-27 and also seek to gain approval to go out to tender for 27-28. So the current situation that we have with our insurance services, which is not unusual and not only limited to Northamptonshire, is that the insurance market, particularly with local government property, is becoming very risk averse. Therefore, unfortunately, what we have seen is an increased demand on information requested, and the demand in terms of trying to collate that information means that we're not able to go out to tender for 26-27. To enable us to ensure that we can go out with the right information to the market, to ensure that we can maintain value for money, and ensure that we do require and gain the insurance services that we need and to mitigate risk, it is, as part of this report, proposed that we do obviously extend and roll over the contract to 26-27 and push the tender back, as outlined in the report. We do have the ability to be able to do this as set out within the risks in the report in section 7 within the procurement legislation. So we are seeking approval of this committee to enable and to endorse this and ensure that we can pursue and gain the information that we do need in order to ensure that we can get to the insurance services that we require. So therefore, I'm happy to take any questions and go to the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members to debate. Councillor Graham Cheatley.
I'm pleased to propose this paper that will allow for the procurement of the Council's insurance services contract to focus on value for money and mitigating any potential risk to continuation of service. It is acknowledged that the local government insurance market over the years has become increasingly challenging and risk adverse by such events as Grenfell and more recently the wreck in schools, which is I think they call it cancerous concrete, don't they, in schools and hospitals. This has inevitably led to an increased level of assurance required by insurers from the Council in terms of condition, construction and systems within properties that it owns, which has not previously been requested. So I fully support this report.
Thank you very much for that. Any other members wish to contribute? Councillor Kirk Harrison.
Thank you again, Chair. There's a saying that's increasingly being used by our officers here at the Council, and that is treat Council money as if it's your own. So this approach is about prudence and preparedness, taking the time to collate the data and make a better informed decision, as we do increasingly more often. This really means that every pound of money saved is a pound that can go to our frontline services. It demonstrates to me professional risk management, so I fully support this and I'm more than happy to second the report. Thank you.
Thank you ever so much. So we have a proposer, which is Councillor Cheatley, a seconder, which is Councillor Kirk Harrison. The recommendations are set out on page 304 of the agenda pack. Please may I have a show for those in favour?
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. So we're nearly there. We come to agenda item 16, which is the Northamptonshire Council. Actually, I've just done that one, haven't I? Have I? No. That's a wrong heading. So it is actually the Education Improvement Framework. So I was looking at the wrong notes. Do apologise. Have you got that, Eddie? So, yeah, thank you. So I'd like to ask Cornelia to present this report.
Thank you, Chair.
Chair, I think we've got John Padwick down to speak on this one.
I do apologise, Mr. Padwick. Yeah, you're welcome to speak, and you have a maximum of 3 minutes to make your statement. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Chair. The emergence of locality hubs for our schools within this schools improvement framework is a welcome development. The sharing of good practice and ideas across education settings is important and should drive forward the principle of working together and sharing responsibility for all the children and young people in the area rather than working in silos. Understandably, academies are primarily responsible and accountable to their parent trusts and may give little priority to working effectively across shared localities. Some of our academies, for example, Kettering Buccleuch, are achieving considerable success. Their inclusion in locality hubs would keep other schools in the locality alive and will help them learn from their achievements and to share concerns around particular issues, such as how to tackle the rising number of school exclusions and even admission policies. This would be a dynamic challenge for all schools within a locality hub, but if we are to most effectively tackle the needs of all our children who don't see themselves or live in silos, it really needs to be tackled, that relationship between academies and other local authority schools. As a local authority, NNC has got the responsibility for all our children and young people, and if we are to discharge that responsibility effectively, we must build relationships not only with individual academies but also with their parent trusts. I think that's quite a difficult challenge there. This can be difficult when schools are effectively working within a competitive educational environment, but it is essential to ensure that every child matters. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. I'd now like to invite Cornelia Andrikut, Executive Director of Children's Services, to introduce this report.
Thank you, Chair. Education Improvement Framework for 2025-2028 defines how the Council will discharge its statutory duties to promote high standards in education in maintained schools, academies, early years providers and independent settings, while supporting all providers through collaboration, challenge and targeted interventions. The framework introduces a locality-based model, 4-tier setting profiles, and structure mechanism for support, challenge, and intervention. The 4-tier setting profiles, Secure Plus, Secure, Vulnerable, and Cause for Concern, have clear criteria for each, which are used to assess capacity and tailor support. Working within the principle of early intervention and spotting any concerns early, the vulnerable settings will receive structured assistance through the Targeted Rapid Improvement Process, TRIP, which includes regular reviews, action planning, and escalation protocols where necessary. The framework is designed to fulfill statutory duties under the Education Act and aligns with the Department for Education guidance, with a strong focus on vulnerable learners, collaboration, and accountability. It is designed to ensure that every child and young person has access to high-quality education and is not left behind, with a particular focus on vulnerable learners, such as looked-after children or children with additional needs, while driving educational excellence across Northamptonshire. Another important element of the framework is head teacher induction and mentoring programs, acknowledging the significant role of the leadership capacity. It is proposed that we will have an annual review of the framework, and adjustments will be based on school forum feedback and national policy changes. There are no new financial implications. This will be funded through the delegated budgets. This concludes my presentation of the proposed framework before the exec this morning. It is recommended that the exec approve the Education Improvement Framework 2025-2028 as the Council's strategic approach to education improvement.
Thank you very much for that. In the absence of Councillor Elizabeth Wright, I'd like Councillor Kirk Harrison, to take the lead on this. Over to you, Kirk.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm very pleased to propose this report. The framework isn't, again, just about words or a collection of good ideas. It's a structured and rigorous approach to drive improvements in our schools. There are clear tiers of support, and the targeted rapid improvement process, or TRIP as it's known in the report, should mean that underperformance is spotted early and addressed quickly. Again, I agree with our speaker, Mr. Padwick. I think the locality model matters. Schools won't be left behind. They won't be working in isolation. They can learn from one another, share best practice, and above all, be supported by advisors who understand local context. At the heart of this framework is our commitment to the most vulnerable and disadvantaged learners in our community. Every child in Northamptonshire deserves the chance to thrive regardless of their background. This approach gives us the tools to make sure that happens. So for me, this is ambition with accountability. It's about building a collaboration culture and raising standards across the board. And on that basis, I'm very pleased to move the report and the recommendations contained within it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Any other members? Councillor Brian Benworth.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think this framework is a really positive step forward in aligning our work across children's services, as it helps bring together early help agenda and education settings. It will bring support directly to schools to ensure that leaders are aligned with the need to improve outcomes for all children and young people, especially those that are most disadvantaged in Northamptonshire. The framework also encourages a collaborative model across academies and maintained schools. Locality support will provide peer-to-peer support. It will share best practice and targeted intervention, coordinated by school improvement advisors and early education childcare advisors. Other proposals in the report include dedicated support for the early years providers, head teacher induction and mentoring. 4 tiers of support will be introduced through this framework, plus or minus secure plus, secure, vulnerable and cause for concern. Educational providers needing the most support would receive structured assistance through the targeted rapid improvement process, as also identified as TRIP, which includes regular reviews, action planning and escalation options where necessary. I support the adoption of this new framework and the rigour that it will bring to our educational settings in Northamptonshire Council, and for those reasons I second this report.
Thank you very much for that. Well, we've covered some very important reports tonight and recommendations. I think we've probably saved the most important one till the end, certainly arguably. So the recommendations are set out in pages 314 of the agenda pack. They've been moved and seconded. Please may I have a show for those in favour.
Unanimous. Councillor Wilcox. Now it's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you ever so much for that. Urgent items of business. I can confirm that I have received no requests to consider any urgent items of business at this meeting. I therefore would like to thank those members, officers, members of the public who have been in attendance, including those who have watched the debates on the YouTube channel. I now declare this meeting closed and thank you all for your cooperation. Thank you.